Yes. So now, as you can see in my copy, I have written the question that I was discussing, that is the three phase of the flow of income, or the triple identity concept, or an elaborative study of the circular flow of income. As you can see written here in my copy, that there are three phases. The three phases that never stops, that do not have any end, that's a never ending process. The three economic activity that never stops are: number one, the production of goods and services; number two, the income generation; and number three, the expenditure. Now, what is the production of goods and services? The word production of goods and services refers to the value addition process. Whenever a producer starts producing an output, at that time it actually adds up some value at each stage, starting from the raw materials till the final output. So from the raw material onwards, it starts making a value addition. It continuously add up the value and ultimately we get a final output. Like an example, suppose I want to make a furniture. If I want to make a furniture, I need some raw timber. That is, I need some log of wood. So the log of wood I have bought with 1000 rupees. That log of wood I have sold by adding more 1000 rupees on it. As 2000 rupees I have sold that log of wood to a carpenter. The carpenter, by buying the log of wood at 2000 rupees, had made a slice of wood, and ultimately those slice of wood was converted into some furniture which he has sold at 3000 rupees. So I bought the log of wood at 1000 rupees and have ultimately added more 2000 rupees into it to sell it at 3000 rupees. So value gets added in the production process at every stage. That's why the production process is also known as value addition process. Now, there are various goods and services that are produced in our economy, as because there is continuous number of demands that is being generated by the countrymen. The second one is income generation. When some production takes place, the production of any commodities takes place due to four factors of production. One is land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. Land gets, by giving its service, gets rent in return. When a labor works and provides a service, it gets wages as its income. When capital is been actually giving its service, suppose a machine is working, it will ultimately earn interest rate as its return. And the entrepreneur always works for profit. So these four factors of production gets some factor returns by providing their factor services. So when the factors of production will provide the factor services, they will get some income generated to it. So these income generations are nothing but the wages, interest, rent, and profit respectively. Now, coming to the third economic activity, that is the expenditure. When the laborer will be getting wages, when the entrepreneur will earn profit, and when the landowner will earn rent, at that time these four factors of production are getting some income. Income of an individual, income of a household ultimately means what? Their purchasing power. So when they will get the purchasing power, they will ultimately have that enough amount of money to spend that for fulfilling their satisfaction. So production is done, that helps in income generation, and ultimately that helps the increase in purchasing power and helps the individual to do the expenditure. These three economic activities are continuously flowing throughout our entire economy. Thus, these three economic activities do not end up anytime, and it's a continuous process that have started for a year and for decades long back, and it's very hard to even predict when these three economic activities will come to an end. Therefore, these three economic activities are a flow variable. Now, I'd like my viewers to just focus on this diagram. What you need to do if you get a question, the triple identity concept or the circular flow of income, a elaborative study. Now, look, you have to make three boxes. I had also made it. The first box represents production, the first phase. When production will take place, ultimately they will be helping the factors of production to generate some income. So the second phase comes with the income generation, that is drawn with a green ink. And this income generation will help the individual to earn their purchasing power. And thus this income generation is helping the individuals to get their expenditure done. Therefore, the expenditure that they will make will ultimately help in creating or in generating more demand. And when the individuals will generate more demand, there will be some simultaneous production activity that takes place in the economy. Therefore, these three economic activities are the three phases of circular flow, and that starts with the production and ends again with the production. So it's a continuous non-stop cycle that goes on. Now, just for your convenience, I had made this entire diagram classified into some bulletins. I had used my different inks to make each entire discussion into some precise form. Just focus here. I have written production activity is also considered as value addition. Why? As because at every stage, some raw materials are getting some value added into it, and ultimately the raw materials are converted into some final output. So ultimately, hiring the factors of production, the producer helps the raw material convert into the final output. I guess you all agree with me, right? Yes. Now, when the production takes place, at that time, different final goods and services are produced in the economy. They comes in the market, and when this market gets all these produced goods and services, they help ultimately the factors of production, that is the land, labor, and capital and entrepreneur, to generate some income. That is, some income gets generated. Look here. The income that is generated by the factor of the production, and the factors of production gets the return and is also known as the factor return. What are the factor returns? Rent for land, wages for labor, interest for capital, and profit for the entrepreneur. They are also known as the factor return for the factor services. Now, these factor services help the factors of production to have their purchasing power. When they have a purchasing power and at the same time they get some goods and services in the economy, they ultimately help themselves to satisfy their wants. So they will go in the market and try to do expenditure for those goods and services. When they will spend those money, ultimately they are distributing their income. So this is a phase of distribution. So when they are distributing their income, they are consuming as well as they are investing. Why? As because I have already discussed previously that expenditure is distributed into two parts. Expenditure is done by the consumer for their own satisfaction, which is known as the consumption expenditure. And when the same expenditure of money will be done by the producer for further production in their own company or in their own firm, at that time the expenditure made by the producer is known as investment expenditure. So consumption expenditure is a type of expenditure. Investment expenditure is also a type of expenditure. So expenditure comprises of these two types of expenditure. So when these expenditures will be done and when the producer will further invest in their company, it will generate more production. When the consumer will start consuming more and more item and will be doing consumption expenditure, they are ultimately generating more demand, and more demand leads to more production activities. Thus, this entire movement is the circular flow of income. This is a never-ending process and never stops anytime. And thus is also known as the triple identity concept. That is, production in an economy leads to income generation, and income generation leads to further expenditure, and expenditure also go back to the entire production generation for the economy. That's all for today's discussion. Hope to see you soon in the next video. Till then, stay connected.